Consultants Consortium of Chennai. Good morning to all of you logged into this session on the role of enterprise applications in management systems, presented by Consultants Consortium of Chennai. I think most of you must be aware of CCC. It's an association of management consultants. We have formed into a formal society, and it's been operational in this year. And one of the objectives of CCC is to disseminate the knowledge across the entire consultant fraternity. And our president, Venugopal, has mandated that this 21 days is used for online sharing of knowledge of all the consultants from wherever domain they are come from. That's going on, and Karthik is instrumental in making sure that this happens and everybody benefited. Thank you, Karthik. Thank you, CCC. And I am going to do this presentation along with my colleague Vasu and Naren, who are actually going to do this from the rest of the session from Hyderabad. So I'm going to give a brief set the context and ask my colleagues to take over the session. And can we move to the next slide? Yeah, as you can see the slide, please, in case if you have any problem, please put your in the chat window any comments. Okay. Basically, we wanted to understand what is enterprise application and the context of a QMS in enterprise application. That's what we will set the agenda to start with, and then we'll move on to specific product suites for the QMS and a lab information management system and document management, which actually works along with the enterprise applications to ensure that management system implementation is live and online. So we will get into details of some of the aspects of lab information system and quality management system. We will end with a couple of quick case studies on how these systems have benefited some customers. That's the overall agenda for the day. And to give you a brief overview about Amity Soft into 3 business domains. One of our business domain is into enterprise solutions, where we provide enterprise applications to customers across. And the second domain is basically in advisory services, where we have been working on this for more than 2 decades on basically CMMI, ISO, typically management system consulting for IT fraternity. And we also have advanced technology labs where we deal with a lot of academic solutions like software testing, machine learning, and so on. Codon is our business partner. We work together on applications like lab information system and quality management system. Codon is a global IT service provider, and they have various applications as well as customized solutions, and their QMS and LIMS products are one of the star products which are used across globally. Let's move to the next slide. Okay, when you look at enterprise applications, okay, we typically think about ERP and then we have customer relationship management, supply chain management, and in that context also there is some QMS. Quality management comes as a part of ERP, but certain aspects of QMS are completely disintegrated from ERP. Similarly, there is some lab management system which is used. Sometimes it is used in an island way. It's in a separate vertical, but with a lesser integration with ERP. And then you also have human capital management and production and manufacturing executions and business analytics and business intelligence. These are various applications that are typically present in the enterprise application suite. Can you move to the next slide? Yeah, so when you get into detail, you will get into seeing that there's general accounting, discrete production, fixed assets, quality management, lab information management, process production, asset management. Okay, so what we are trying to talk about in this the entire process is when you look at QMS or as a management system. Okay, the management system practices are implemented through various automated components of the enterprise solutions. There are, for example, can you move to the next slide? Okay, if you look at a typical enterprise process flow, okay, there is a manufacturing unit, and you have a supplier, you have finance, you have warehouse, and so on and so forth. So when you purchase, okay, there is some incoming goods inspection happens, and there are some checklists which are driven by the QMS as well as ERP, which gets triggered, so that at the gate level, what sort of quality check you need to do. All these things are happening through automated system, and they get recorded. Similarly, at various stages in the production, incoming process is one, but production process and the final finished goods, all these areas, various checkpoints in which the quality aspects are actually captured and online and gets recorded. Okay, so this is the process flow of entire ERP, and then the QMS piece and the LIMS piece sit together as a part of these components. Can you move to the next slide?
Yeah.
So this is where we will see that how ERP and QMS, how they complement each other from here. And I request Vasu to take over from here.
Okay. Thanks a lot, Jayakumar. Hi, everybody. This is Vasu Nugalan. I'm part of Codan Software, and we are a business partner with Amity Soft. We've been doing, he's my colleague for a long time. We knew each other for almost like 30 years. I'm really glad for this opportunity so that we can present to you all what is possible in enterprise solutions. Okay. So please keep your questions handy towards the end of the session so that we'll move on with the presentation first, and then we'll be opening the floor for Q&A. Then we'll be able to answer as much as possible so that we can clarify any doubts or questions or how everything works together. Okay, so I'm just gonna move on with the ERP and QMS and explain to you what ERP's role is and what QMS role is per se. ERP usually what it does is what sequence of what to be done and who is part of everything. Focuses on end results of a process, and controls are put in place so that everybody is notified, sort of thing, and integrates data across the departments of a company. And also information flow is immediate only if the data is available. So the ERP, if you look at the bigger scheme of things, it gives you what is happening with an organization at that particular moment with the available data. So sometimes there is a possibility that ERP does not have a real-time data. In those cases, you'll be seeing a snapshot of what is happening within a company. But some of the other solutions, they can work together to make this the data transfer go more seamlessly with ERP so that it can be more useful within the organizational point of view. Like for instance, QMS, what QMS focuses on is more how to do and who does it. When what it means is how to do means it wants to keep track of your work instructions, standard operating procedures and everything. And when QMS says who has to do it, basically the QMS wants to know who the personnel who are going to be operating this, whether they have the right training credentials or they've gone through other things. And QMS also focuses on defect-free operation, which is more in the realm of QMS than ERP. And QMS also tracks KPIs and objectives, but the data might be coming from ERP to QMS system. So they're actually working together. And then Kappa is one of the biggest component of QMS, where it's actually keeping track of KPIs and objectives. If they're not in sync, it starts analyzing what is happening and then how do we resolve these non-conformances. And the other thing is the internal audits. That's one of the biggest component of QMS system where we're actually trying to understand, you know what, at the beginning of our operations, we have figured out, you know, how to do everything, and then whether the internal audits actually helps the organization to make sure that whether we're following the same guidelines or not. If we are not, then we are going to raise a non-conformance, and then you do a tracking. And then it also helps us to do regular intervals of reviews, and then see what are the other opportunities for improvements. And I'm going to give typical production process illustration. I'm sure everybody knows, but still I'm going to give you some information as to, you know, how production process, this we will be using as part of a case study also towards the end. But I just want to show, you know, how the ERP does from the production perspective. So as you mean, production from ERP point of view is 3 components. One is production, quality, and data. So production point of view, there is a schedule, and then there is a plan, and actual produced amount has to be tracked. That is what ERP is interested in. At the same token, quality, from quality perspective, whether whatever has been produced has met the need, met the quality needs. And then, you know, how much has passed quality, how much has failed or whatever, that is what we're looking at. And data, the data gets almost like a real time, but maybe not sometimes, because people have to wait till the end of the shift to update it. So, you know, that's why it may not be real time, but it could be made real time. And then also, of course, the daily reports for the management so that they can see and understand. But in the same process, from QMS point of view, we look at different things. So we have to verify during production process whether the settings of the equipment that's being used have been got the right settings, and SOPs are updated regularly, and whether we're meeting KPIs and targets. And then when you go into controls, where there's a couple of important concepts QMS looks at, which is quality inspections and defect-wise data capturing. What that means is we have to, as every set of manufacturing process has by shifts or lines or however you look at it, we want to make sure the data is, the quality is being validated against the specifications. And there is another component which is very critical as part of controlling aspect of QMS is SPC, which is a statistical process control, where we're trying to figure out whatever the procedures we're following produces the products which meets the requirements. So they call it CP and CPK, which is process capabilities. And from the analysis and CAPA perspective is we're looking at the KPIs and then monitoring them and then comparing them with targets and then see how we are progressing. When these two don't match, then we have to look at, how do we improve things so that we can meet the requirements, and how do we improve as an organization. So that is what I'm just giving a brief on production process illustration so that you have an idea. So this is how, then you might wonder, why do we need QMS or why do we need ERP? We may need, some companies may need both, and how do they complement each other? SOPs is more in the realm of QMS, and where you have a document management with revision, version control, and everything. And so KPIs with targets, ERP collects the data, and then QMS uses that to process. And process performance, the ERP captures at the high level data, but rest of it is manipulated inside QMS to get the SPC and CP and CPK. And usually ERPs don't have too many the analytics part of it, but nowadays most of them do have it, I believe. But the QMS has also come with the analytics part, because that is very important to understand costing analysis and then defect analysis and everything. So it's built into the system. And moving on to Kappa, which is not part of ERP, so where you have very elaborate system of tracking 7 stages of effective resolution, where initial analysis, data collection, root cause, and then you have a CA, and then preventive analysis, and then implementation and verification. So it goes through 7 stages of it. So making sure that we understand what is happening and then why it happened, how do we resolve it, and then even after resolution, we're going to verify and make sure that whatever the resolved issue is actually fixed. And then internal audits, this is also purely in the realm of QMS, it's not in the realm of ERP. So the scheduling part, conducting, and reporting, these are the 3 aspects of internal audits. So usually most of the companies do, you schedule per year, or within how many year, within a year, how many internal audits need to be conducted, and then the actual conducting part of it. And then whoever is part of this team, conducting team, will realize they're going to be observing, and then they raise a report at the end of it. As part of the report, they could raise non-conformances. Basically what this means is they have realized whatever has been the manifesto of the company, we're slightly moved away from it, so that has to be raised as a non-conformance so that we can bring it in sync with the company objectives. And usually the QMS follows PDCA cycle. I'll show you in the next slide what is PDCA cycle is. It's basically plan, do, check, act. That's what they call it, which is very it's part of QMS, and then it's like we can't walk away from it. So I hope everybody can see this. It's a big slide, so this is plan, do, check, act is basically ISO 9001 2015 we're talking about here. And if you look at where the 4, 5, 6, 7, whatever they call it, those are the ISO numbering systems. So those are the components. So plan actually looks at context, leadership, planning, and support of from the perspective of an organization. Do looks at operations of the organization. Check is evaluating performance. Act is what are we doing to improve all the whatever evaluated stuff. So if you look at it, basically this is an essential part of any QMS system, especially if we want to conform to ISO 9001 kind of setting. And I'm on the bottom of the screen, we're just showing how these things are met with the QMS systems. So usually in plan section, we're going to be collecting all the document management and quality objectives, making sure that all the objectives and targets are documented, and then we are recording all of them so that we can validate it. And also same thing about the assets within a company. That is nothing but equipments that are being used as part of our organization, whether everything has been calibrated or PMs have been scheduled properly, and then how they're doing. And then moving on to the do part of it is more about operations. Let us say we produce something, what do we do with it? So we have to make sure that we validate the outputs and then make sure that we are capable of manufacturing something properly. And then check and act, which gives us corrective action, preventive action module, where you're tracking all the non-conformances and deviations. And as we already discussed about internal audits, where we're doing all the auditing and then tracking them. Management review, this is very another important aspect to be capable company for a manufacturing right things is reviewing every monthly or quarterly, however the company policies are, making sure that we raise as an action points, and then we validate whether these action points have been done properly or not. KPIs will help us to understand how we're doing. And the other important, lot of companies are using now is the CI, which is continual improvement module, where people pick up some of the things that can be improved along the manufacturing process, or it could be other departments. Everybody can raise them. So the CI module makes sure that any risk assessments, if they come up with some things that should be improved across the organization, that they become part of CI module. And the product suite, which we would be, slightly touching, is Codon QMS, which is, I've given the websites along the way. And then Codon LIMS and DocuHive. Like I was saying, next slides will go into a little bit more detail what each product does. So Codon LIMS is the complete module for QC QA setup in GLP and GMP certified industries. This can be used in multiple verticals, like it could be pharmaceuticals or any kind of manufacturing industry. So it tracks personnel management, consumables, training of employees, instruments, calibration, and it has a lot of modules, as you can see. And then it has information about reports and certificate of analysis. A lot of companies do produce, whenever the sample finished goods or along the intermediates or something, they have to produce something called certificate of analysis. That is the end goal of this. And this Codon LIMS actually integrates with the ERP system, so that ERP has the complete traceability from the raw material receiving all the way till the finished goods production. And it has it can be used within ISO 17025, also NABO accreditations. And DocuHive is, which is a document management system where you can track version control of the documents. And it has quite a bit of workflow integrated into it. What workflow means is, if you are doing a collaborative document creation, then this helps teams. Like if you have 5 people need to be collaborated together to come up with a finished document. So it goes through these 5 stages. At the end of it, you have an approved document. And then the security and roles, that is how the security is built into the system. So the people who can use the document is possible only if they have access. So I'm going to move on to QMS. I'm going to slightly speed up a little because we have a limited time. I have only about 10 minutes, I think. So QMS, as we've been talking about it, it has modules for Kappa. Within Kappa, we have a 7 stages controls, and it tracks suppliers, which is very important component, because we want to make sure that all the suppliers are, giving us the right products which meet the right requirements. And CI is SPC, and a lot of reporting and analytics and everything are part of it. And if you can see, this is how the QMS modules are, meets ISO requirements. You have a resource management responsibility, measurement, and product realization. Basically, the whole goal of this effort is to have a satisfied customer at the end. And this is exactly what QMS requirements are. I already discussed about this slide: plan, do, check, and act. So this is how the flow happens, which is which we already discussed. So this is just another illustration, why is QMS important. And if you look at this is a typical incident flow, how it goes. So if you look at it, there is an incident raised, and then review incident and data collection part starts. Basically, we're trying to see whether this should be raised as an incident or not, and then based on, then it goes to initial assessment, and then we go through root cause analysis. In root cause analysis, you have multiple options like 5 Ys, 4W, 1H, and the fishbone diagram possibilities. So, people choose whichever one that fits the needs of a company. All these things are possible within most of the solutions. You can pick up whichever is the right option for root cause analysis. And then the cross-functional team is collected, and then they will be creating Kappa solutions. And then you basically, whatever has been discussed and raised across the cross-functional teams is going to be implemented. And then there is a verification phase, and then you have a closure. So that is how the whole flow happens, the incidents and resolutions. Okay. And I'm just going to briefly, quickly actually go through the screens rather than spend too much time on this. So it usually, typically, what happens is in QMS applications, you'll have a dashboard which gives you complete perspective on what is happening across the organization. And if you have multiple locations within a organization, let us say if you have an organization, and then you have a manufacturing unit spread out across India and outside India, then you can go by each location to get the data. And then the QMS has another important thing is it audits all the operations so that we know what is happening and then who is doing what. So this is typically what, from the quality point of view, what QMS tracks: document management, calibration, SPC, Kappa, training, and all this. So the next screens, briefly, we walk through these screens where it shows exactly what are those screens about. So KPI is one of the component where we're tracking, there is a possibility of creating multiple KPIs within department. And all this data is secure in the sense only people who are allowed to access them will access, other people will not be able to access. That doesn't mean that they cannot get into this system. They will get into the enterprise solution, but they can only use other components of this application, not everything. So if you can see it, logistics can have their own KPIs and production can have their own KPIs, and then we can track monthly and then how we are doing when compared with targets. And then there is going to be graphing solution built into it so that you can actually see what is happening. And then as a KPI is, you have to collect data that can come from ERP system, or this system can work independently also. So this is document management is built into the system, so you can maintain all the different versions, and then as you are doing different versioning, you can keep track of the modification history so that you can give it to auditors or something to make sure that everything is tracked, why we're doing these changes, and then whether these changes have been approved by right authorities within the organization. All right, so I'm just going to briefly go through instruments and calibrations, screens, training, which tracks, calendar, courses, vendor management, and LIMS life cycle, like how do they do the sample analysis and everything. So this is a typical flow. you define a sample, and then you define specifications, and then the QC takes over to do the complete analysis, and then comes up with out of spec or out of trend, and then that would be reported back to the management. So now, sorry, I have to go quicker, and then we're going to jump to questions and answers session because we're short on time. So please raise your questions, and we'll try to answer as much as possible. Please go ahead.
Yeah, I see. Vasu, I suggest that we can just quickly run through the 2 case studies and then get into questions.
Okay. So in LIMS case study, we've been working with some companies, typical organizations, or they have an R&D unit and as well as production unit based on their R&D studies. So the way they do it is they study the process and then figure out how to do procedures, and then that procedure becomes a standard across the company in production process. So they basically migrate that into the QC labs, and then they do make sure that whoever wants to do this as part of a QC analysis, they have to be trained, and then the raw materials has to be QC'd, and as the production process moves along from raw materials to the finished goods, the QC takes care of the analyzing samples, and then that reflects back into ERP. That is a typical LIMS case study. And typical battery manufacturing QMS study is, like I was always been telling, KPI, ASPC, customer complaints, and internal audits. So this is true in any manufacturing industry per se, but some reports might change. For instance, in customer complaints, in these kind of organizations, they look at 8D reports, and some company organization will look at different things. So it helps having a QMS within any organization is the building quality culture that becomes a part of a habit for the whole company, as in like employees and the management, because that makes sure that they're giving the right products at right quality to their customers. So that is all I have to say. I mean, as part of this training exercise, please, now the floor is open for Q&As.
Hi Vasu, this is Kaustam.